Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's Lifestyle Series webinar. I'm Karen Graffio, the project manager and content specialist with Diabetes Sisters, and also a woman living with diabetes. We're so glad that you've joined us today. Diabetes Sisters is a national community committed to providing support, education, and advocacy for women with or at risk of diabetes. Our programs include virtual peer support meetups, monthly educational webinars, and plenty of opportunities to connect around shared experiences and challenges of diabetes in our interactive workshops. Today's session is part of our Lifestyle Series, designed to spotlight innovative collaborations that support the diabetes community. We're so excited to feature Blue Circle Health, a nonprofit that offers free comprehensive services tailored for individuals with type 1 diabetes. Their approach addresses the full spectrum of needs, from navigating access and care to empowering self-management, especially during critical moments like new diagnosis or challenges in ongoing care. At Diabetes Sisters, we believe collaborations like this one enrich our collective impact. And today's webinar is just an excellent example of how nonprofits can work together to serve the diabetes community more effectively. I'm very excited now to our guest speakers. My friend Scott Johnson is a senior community manager at Blue Circle Health. He was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes in 1980, and he's been a leading voice in the diabetes online community and industry for over 2 decades. A longtime advocate and storyteller, Scott brings deep personal and professional insights into the type 1 experience. He currently lives near San Diego, where he enjoys spending time with family and playing basketball. We also have Susan Nash, a retired pediatric physical therapist who relocated from the Chicago area to South Florida to enjoy year-round outdoor activities with her family. She loves biking, open water swimming, and exploring South Florida's natural beauty. Diagnosed with type 1 diabetes in 2022, Susan brings us the perspective of navigating a new diagnosis later in life and the self-advocacy it took to get there. Please join me in welcoming Scott and Susan.
Great. Thank you, Karen. So hello again. My name is Scott Johnson. I'm excited to join you tonight. And as we talked about in the introduction, with type 1 diabetes for 45 years, I'm excited to share a bit more about Blue Circle Health. Susan, I'm going to ask you to mute your Zoom until we come back to you. Just getting a little bit of echo. Perfect. Thank you. So excited to share a little bit more about Blue Circle Health, and please jump in with questions along the way, add them to the Q&A buttons, and we'll also have plenty of time at the end for any questions that we don't answer along the way. So today we're going to cover the story behind Blue Circle Health and its mission. We'll go into some details about the services offered and the qualification criteria. And then you'll hear firsthand experiences from our special guest, Susan, who has benefited from the program. So I'm sure I don't have to explain this to all of you here today, but there's a gap between what's needed to live well with type 1 diabetes and what's reimbursed by today's healthcare system. And this translates to a gap between what people with T1D need and what today's healthcare system offers. And it's frustrating because type 1 diabetes can be very challenging even when you get everything you ask for. So if you also have to cope with a lack of specialty care and access to supplies when you need them, it makes an already hard thing just that much harder, which is why Blue Circle Health exists. So a little bit of background, Blue Circle Health is a 501c3 nonprofit organization that offers free care, education, and support for adults with type 1 diabetes. The idea for Blue Circle Health started in 2022 when the Helmsley Charitable Trust, which is an organization dedicated to improving the lives of people with type 1 diabetes, they gathered experts in the diabetes field to really address that gap between what people with type 1 diabetes need and what they get. And Blue Circle Health is what came out of that gathering. We believe that people with type 1 diabetes shouldn't have to fight for what they need to live. So we created a free clinical care, education, and support program so that people with type 1 diabetes can focus on living and not just surviving. I'll go into more detail in a moment, but first I'd like to play a short 90-second video from a few of our program participants.
I was waking up and my blood sugars at 400, 600 every day. That to me, waking up dizzy, tired was normal.
My day consisted of working with my parts all day long. I didn't have a life. I didn't know what I was doing wrong. I knew nothing about the pump.
And even with the knowledge I have as a nurse, I still didn't have the knowledge to control my diabetes.
I didn't have the right tools or the right education. Even though I've been diabetic my whole life,
It just became so common to me to keep getting sick all the time, all the time. The ambulance people already knew me. I knew the crew that was gonna pick me up. It's scary.
And then the circle showed up.
The confidence I have today. I feel like a new person. I feel happier. I feel safer. I'm just glad I grasped the control in time.
my journey with you guys has been amazing. I feel like I have my life back.
I don't know where I would be. And I am so thankful for that. I am so grateful for your program. It's amazing. Absolutely amazing.
When you change somebody's life in the way they have changed mine, and after a lot I've been through with diabetes, it's priceless.
All right, so just to go into a little more detail, Blue Circle Health, we're a free virtual program for adults living with type 1 diabetes, offering free care, education, and support to those who need an extra hand. And we're an extension of the care that you already receive. So you stay connected to your medical home. We're not coming in to replace your primary care provider or replace your endocrinologist. We're really just here to help close the gap between what you're getting and what you may really need. So what does that mean exactly? Our program, it's 6 months long, up to 6 months long. It's done entirely virtually over Zoom, text, and phone. Offers as much or as little support as requested. So you can come in and take advantage of every service we offer, or just pick the ones you need. And more on that in just a second. Again, you stay connected to your primary care providers, your endos, and we send them chart notes throughout the program so that they're up to date with what's happening in terms of the care we're providing. And they can also communicate back to us and request that we maybe focus in on an area that they maybe are concerned about, or they would like to just boost you up a little bit more in. Our services are completely free, regardless of insurance and immigration status. And re-enrollment is possible 1 year from the original enrollment date. So the graphic on the right side shows the available services, and I'll describe them in more detail, going counterclockwise and starting with clinical care. So clinical care, it's exactly what it sounds like. You can book visits with our team of endocrinologists or advanced nurse practitioners. We offer insurance navigation, so that is consultation with insurance specialists who can help you understand and maximize any insurance coverage you may have. They can also help you find insurance coverage if needed and help with prior authorizations. So as I mentioned just a second ago, our services are free regardless of any insurance coverage. But if you do have insurance coverage, you can send our insurance navigation team a picture of your insurance card, and they can look into not just specifics about that company or what they may cover, but specifics about you and your policy and your coverage, and then talk with you to help you understand all of that sometimes complicated insurance jargon and lingo. So it's a really unique offering that I wish I would have had years and years before. We also offer diabetes supportive counseling, so that can help with some of the emotional burden of T1D. We offer case management, so our case managers can help you if you're struggling with maybe food, housing, or employment insecurities. We know that people can't focus on diabetes when there are bigger and more urgent problems that they're wrestling with. Peer support. So in addition to the monthly group sessions, you'll have a dedicated T1D support guide to work with who will help you navigate all of the other services that are available, but are also just kind of a central and single point of contact for you if you just need someone to talk to or vent to or whatever the case may be. We offer education and nutrition services. So these are visits with registered dietitians and certified diabetes care and education specialists. And then there are 2 additional programs available within the Blue Circle Health program that I want to touch on. The first is prescription assistance for qualified applicants who maybe need a little bit of help paying for supplies and medications. The qualification for that is an income level at or below 300% of the federal poverty level. And then we also have a program called Intro to CGM, which provides 3 months of free education and access to a CGM for those who have maybe not had reliable access to one before. Again, we provide all of our services free of charge, regardless of insurance status or immigration status. And while our 6-month program is designed to educate and empower people to live well with diabetes and sort of learn to navigate the healthcare system better, we also recognize that type 1 diabetes, it's a lifelong journey, and we recognize that life can throw unexpected curves along the way. So therefore, people can re-enroll in the program 1 year after their initial enrollment date if needed. Everyone who enrolls, they get a unique and individual care plan during intake. So you can choose which of the services you'd like to use, and we're happy to help as much or as little as needed. If you sign up and only need help with one thing, you don't need to see any of the other providers. And your plan can also flex and change as your needs or interests change. So this slide displays some information about participants taking advantage of our services at various levels, and not everyone uses every service. I also wanted to share some quick statistics about the Intro to CGM and the prescription assistance programs that I mentioned before. And again, there are financial and logistical qualifications for these 2 special programs. But one thing I'd like to point out here is that you don't have to be experiencing financial hardship to make use of Blue Circle Health's primary services that I described on the previous slides. And additionally, we're here for everyone with diabetes, not just those who are having trouble making ends meet, and not just for those who are newly diagnosed. If you think about it, even the most well-to-do person with type 1 diabetes often needs a little bit of help from time to time. But for those who have bumped into some additional hardships, we may be able to help there too. When it comes to eligibility requirements, it's actually pretty broad and open. So you need to have a diagnosis of type 1 diabetes, and that also includes LADA and some of the other less common but still out there forms of diabetes. We're only serving adults, so you have to be over the age of 18. You have to speak English or Spanish, and we do provide full service lines in both languages. You have to also have the ability to connect and participate in virtual care. And I know for all of us here attending a webinar, that's kind of a no-brainer, but we do help many people who maybe don't have consistent access to an internet connection, or maybe they don't have their own smartphone. And so they'll maybe borrow a neighbor's smartphone or find some ways to get connected to get the help that they need. I'm going to skip the states for a second and come back to that. But we don't take care of people who are experiencing pregnancy. And while we do recognize that there's a huge need for that, we also think that as a virtual program, someone who's pregnant, they really need that in-person care. And so that's why that requirement exists. So going back to the states, you have to reside in one of the states that we're available in. So right now that's Florida, Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, Ohio, Delaware, Alabama, Mississippi, Missouri, or Iowa. And there are additional states coming soon, and I'll talk more about that in just a moment. And again, I want to stress that this is not just for people newly diagnosed with T1D. We're here for people no matter where they are in their type 1 diabetes journey. So you might be asking, like, what happens once I submit a form or express some interest? So once enrolled, and once you submit a form, you'll get a phone call from our clinical enrollment specialist team, and they'll talk with you, answer any questions that you may have, talk with you about some of those eligibility requirements and make sure that you do qualify. But once you're enrolled, the first appointment is typically within just a few days of receiving all of the completed consent forms, and that's all done electronically as well. And then above and beyond the program, we do host monthly group sessions similar to this one where people with T1D who are actively in the program or who have been in the program in the past can join. And we usually discuss like a specific topic followed by lots of open conversation and reconnecting. And then we also host monthly educational webinars on various topics. So to give you an idea of some of the topics, the last few webinars have been about maybe setting realistic goals with T1D, exercise and activity with T1D, nutrition and meal prepping. And we've got one coming up next week about making sense of your T1D data, and you're all welcome to join if you're interested and available. We also host monthly cooking classes where Rita Rubin, who is a registered dietitian and one of our diabetes educators, comes on and teaches a couple of really nice, delicious recipes and talks about how to make the most of the nutritional elements and aspects about how those meals might affect your blood sugar, things like that. And what's really fun about those classes is that during the class, the people who attend actually get to vote on next month's recipes. And so there's a bit of interaction and you're kind of in the driver's seat there, helping determine what recipes Rita goes over in those. So you can check out the website for a list of upcoming event details and registration links. The cooking classes and all the webinars are open to anyone, regardless of what state you're in and regardless of whether or not you're a part of the Blue Circle program already or not. The group sessions where we pull together everyone, those are kind of more of a sacred space for those who are in the program. And I know Susan has joined several of those and we'll probably share a little bit about that too. But I hope that you'll take a look and join us for any of the open sessions that interest you. And I mentioned the states, right? So as I mentioned when we started, Blue Circle Health has been around since 2022. But we spent the first couple of years building the company's systems, staffing, and infrastructure. And then our care team actively started seeing patients in January of just 2024 and only in the state of Florida, and has since served more than 600 people with T1D, and we've expanded to 10 states. So I wanted to just share that to give you an idea of how fast we're pushing to get to the additional states and things like that too. So we do have more states on the way before the end of this year, but because we have to navigate all of the tricky clinical licensing and things like that, we're pretty cautious about sharing what states we're going to be in next until we have all of those logistical details lined up. And at this point, it's just too early for me to share what states are coming next. But our vision is to be available for anyone in the United States with type 1 diabetes, and so that's what we're pushing for. Right now we've got the capacity to help more people, and that's why we're working with great nonprofit partners like Diabetes Sisters to raise awareness and spread the word. And that's exactly what brings me here tonight. So I think my ask as I wrap up here is that if you or someone you know with T1D is in a state that we're available in, and they're looking for an extra hand with their diabetes, we would absolutely love to help. Be an honor to help somebody with their diabetes journey. You can get all the information and details on our website at bluecirclehealth.org. And I'd love to see some of you at our webinars or cooking classes. And again, those are open to anyone, no matter what state you're in. And I'm often pretty involved in hosting those and leading those. So it'd be a real treat to see some people there. And then before we open it up for questions, I'd love to turn it over to our special guest, Susan, who's been through the program and would like to share some of her experiences with you. So Susan, I'll pass it over to you. I'll take the slides down, and maybe if you could tell us a little bit about your story with type 1 diabetes, how you found Blue Circle Health, and what your experience is like. And don't forget to come off mute there. There we go. Perfect.
Thank you, Scott. Yeah, it's really an honor to be here. Yeah, start with my story, right? I want to talk about just the whole journey and how incredibly rewarding my contact with the people that support us has been. What a lifesaver. So, in the beginning, I was 67, and if you can do math, you could probably figure out how old I am now. But when I was 67, I noticed a big bump up in my hemoglobin A1C during some blood testing that was just done before a surgery. And I was concerned about it. I went to my primary, who said, no, you're too slender and fit to have diabetes. Don't worry about it. And that just didn't make sense to me. And I asked him, was there anything I could do, like with exercise or, nutrition? He's like, no, just don't worry about it. So then I sent myself to an endocrinologist who said basically the same thing. And I was convinced that I maybe had prediabetes. So I read this book I went on Google, right? What we all do, we have medical problems. I went on Google and I got this book called Mastering Diabetes, and it was about this, lifestyle approach. And I read it was really good. It had, it said that basically everyone that has a higher hemoglobin A1C or an elevated blood glucose should really have this test done called a C-peptide test, which is a measure of how much insulin my pancreas can spit out. And so my C-peptide test came back really low, which is consistent with type 1. So I was like, oh, okay, so I finally connected with a primary that looked at the C-peptide test and took me seriously and started me on insulin, but I really didn't have any information. I'm like, well, what am I, and I didn't know, like, okay, apparently I have diabetes, but what kind? And, but I had my insulin prescription, and I had a syringe, and not a syringe, I had a pen, and so kind of off I went. It was a few months before I could get off the waiting list and see an endo. And so I was pretty overwhelmed at first. And I'm a retired physical therapist, so I had seen, unfortunately, a lot of really serious outcomes of diabetes, people that hadn't been able to care for it. And I was terrified. I was like completely overwhelmed. I was very confused. I didn't know what I was supposed to do exactly. And it was a moving target. So I had a coach in this Mastering Diabetes program, and she encouraged me. She encouraged me to like take data on my blood glucose. And I did that, and I went to my endo, who's supportive, and I said, it looks like I need more than just like once a day, because I'm going really high after meals. So after every meal, because this is what happens when you get diabetes, when you get diagnosed when you're 67, I was so hyper vigilant. It was horrible. So my glucose would spike after a meal, and I would go walk for an hour. because I couldn't handle it being high. I just could picture all those complications. And so anyway, I showed my endo my data, and he's like, "Oh yeah, you need multiple daily injections." So he was helpful in that. And I started listening sort of compulsively to podcasts about diabetes, all different ones. And on the podcast, they said, you have to have community. If you're going to survive, you've got to have community. So I ended up on Instagram, which, if you're like, I'm just not, a lot of boomers are really savvy at tech, but I was not one of them. But I'm like, okay, I'm going to learn this because I got to do this diabetes thing. And I started learning a lot on Instagram. And there was one lady in particular was great, Michelle, the global diabetic. Anyway, on Instagram, there were some ads for this thing called Blue Circle. And I'm looking at it and I'm going, wait a minute, it's free. And they're going to do all that for me. I'm like, they're probably going to get my credit card number, my checking account number, and they're going to sell me cinnamon, So I saw the ad a couple times. I kind of ignored it. But when Michelle recommended it, I'm like, well, it must be for real. So I got in touch with them, and it was really an amazing journey. I look back I took notes. So I'm going to look at my notes because it was just, I was not sleeping well, which I guess is normal for people with diabetes, but I really wasn't sleeping well, not just because of the getting woken up, but also because I just was so anxious about trying to manage this and it's not good when a perfectionist with anxiety gets diabetes, really a bad combo. But, because there is no perfectionism, there's no perfect with it. So I was really struggling. I didn't realize how much I was struggling emotionally, but I was really struggling emotionally. And I had things that I wanted to do that I wasn't sure how I could do them with diabetes, because I was on this special diet that really helped me a lot. I didn't want to give it up, but it's not very portable. And so I started out with the peer coach. And the peer coach really helped me a lot. I had this kind of funny, like my C-peptide would go up and down. So my insulin needs would go up and down. And, I felt so isolated and different and confused. And he had the same kind I did, so it was pretty cool. And he walked me through some things that were really terrifying for me, like really going on a roller coaster when I was away for the weekend and, just taking that, slowing it down and explaining to me that giving insulin is kind of like steering the boat. Like you don't just steer the boat real hard one way and then steer it really hard the other way, So I was trying to micromanage that, the insulin, the highs and the lows, which, as you know, was a total disaster. And then someone I was talking to explained to me that I needed to be curious, not furious, about my blood glucose levels, which really helped me a lot. And I can't go into detail about everybody and how much, well, I will talk about everybody, but not how much everybody helped me. So one thing that really made a huge difference for me was that almost every practitioner I spoke with had type 1. So there just was a sense of confidence and connection. But I talked with the nurse practitioner, Eleni, and living in Florida, I was really worried about disasters because they happen regularly. And so we had already been through a few hurricanes, and just the terror of having my devices, not having the battery for my devices, or having the refrigeration fail, racing around town right before a hurricane trying to find a refrigerator. It was just like really, really scary. And so Eleni showed me some things that made it much less terrifying for me. It's like she showed me like, this is what you do, or this is how you do this. I had not used a syringe. Those of you who got diagnosed as youngsters, you probably can do that in your sleep, right? But I hadn't used one. It just really opened up a whole new world for me in terms of flexibility. The different people, the coach and Eleni and the social worker really helped me to be less hypervigilant and less terrified. Like I was terrified when my blood glucose went over 130. I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to die, And they kind of helped me have a perspective of what the safe range was and to really believe it. I hadn't really believed other providers that had told me about that. So I worked with a social worker on my team. You know, if something's free, I'm going to use it. So I don't know if I realized how much I needed social work, but she really was life-changing for me in terms of being able to tackle things. So I really wanted to go. There's another organization called Connected in Motion, which is just an active adventure program and a retreat program for adults with type 1. And they were doing a trip to Sequoia, and I had just signed up because I was like, I want to do this. And then after I signed up, I'm like, I can't do this. I can't go where I don't have control over my food. And I do everything on my app. And, anyway, she helped me walk through it. And it was an amazing experience. I got to carpool with a couple other ladies with type 1. And I got to see what it's like to not be in total control. I only had eaten meals at home. So I got to not have that kind of control over my food, and I survived, and my blood glucose didn't go crazy. It's just but the little baby steps of getting there and dealing with, okay, I was going to feel anxious, but I could deal with it. And then I'm going through my notes here. There's another person I really thought I didn't need on my team, which is a dietitian. I'm like, dietitian, I got my diet all dialed in. And she gave me so many strategies. So things like travel. I wanted to travel, but I didn't know how to travel. Like, what do? You're not in the house, and how does this even work? So she gave me really good strategies, and we talked about I have kind of an issue with travel eating, like eating in the plane, eating on the road food, So we came up with some ideas that really worked beautifully. And then also for me to start, and I'm sure a lot of people are far ahead of me in this path, but for me to start getting more comfortable eating in a restaurant. And that was big for me. And that's a whole life issue. And another thing Rita and I talked about, and I hope that, not many of you have the same issue, but I got diagnosed at 67, and my husband did not date a diabetic. He did not marry a diabetic. He wasn't planning on living with diabetes. And I wasn't planning on it either, and I wasn't really happy about it. But by now, I was going to different places where I was getting support for it, like the Diabetes Sangha and, of course, Blue Circle. So when he was frustrated with it, it really bothered me. And I wasn't very sympathetic. I'm like, if you don't like diabetes, get lost, buddy. So that was not empathetic or helpful. So anyway, she kind of helped me navigate, challenges with family and the stresses that they were exposed to from, dealing with me and how I was dealing with my diabetes. So I'm trying to think. Since then, I've been to the Grand Canyon twice hiking, and, just a lot of different travel and being able to meet friends at restaurants for food. Some of the things that sound really mundane and simple, and probably are for some people, but for me, it was huge. And through this, my control is the same or better. And my level of terror is vastly reduced. It's not the constant issue. Like, I would have my phone out, no matter where I was, I would have my phone out and I'd be staring at it during a meal, during a concert, whatever. And I would just say, like, hey, I've got diabetes. I got to keep an eye on this, and I don't need to do that now. I can just relax and live my life, so it's still a factor. It's still something I'm aware of. But there's a level of freedom and ability to participate in my life that I didn't think I would have. And I'm setting goals that I had given up on. Like, I'm kind of curious about that Camino in Costa Rica, so it's kind of expanded my whole life. And I'm just really happy that it's in so many states, and that it's for real. Nobody tried to sell me cinnamon.
Susan, thank you so much for sharing so much about you and your story, your life with diabetes. I mean, even though I've been diagnosed for a long time, many of the things that you mentioned really resonated with me, especially, you described talking about parts of life that are maybe easy or simpler for many people. But when you layer in everything that we have to think about with diabetes, it kind of gets the old hamster wheel rolling with all of the what ifs scenarios that we have to think about. And I just sense with you, so we talked for the first time, you and I, several months into your program, and looking at the difference in just the way you describe your anxiety level living with diabetes. And I know that one of the things you talked about when we first met was you and your husband want to go do some of these active adventures. That's why you moved to South Florida, and I see just your horizons broadening almost day by day, and it's just so fun to watch.
Thank you. I'm really so grateful for all the people that work so hard to connect us in community and help us. And I don't know if you realize how life-changing you are. But Karen, I just got to meet you, and Scott. It's an honor to be with you guys.
I loved hearing your story and I got a lot out of it. But the one thing that keeps resonating through my brain is curious but not furious. I'm
Cool.
going to use that when I look at my CGM. That's going to go through my head. Be curious but not furious.
Absolutely. One of the components of Susan's story that I think really fits very nicely into what we're talking about here today is the value of community and peer support, and just simply finding ways to get yourself exposed to other people living with diabetes. And I just think that's such a valuable thing. I'm so grateful for Diabetes Sisters and the work that you, Karen, and the organization do to make that happen and make it possible, because it's all too easy, especially when you're frustrated and feeling anxious and stuff, to just kind of pull back and not talk to other people. But it's such an important part of it.
It really is. If I could share a little personal story, for me, finding the online community, we're probably getting close to 20 years ago now, made
Yeah.
all the difference in my management and my life and my confidence level, because I was diagnosed as a preteen and spent years feeling like the odd person out, and I don't want anyone to know, and nobody understands what's going through. And when you find that community of other people who walk the same path you're on and can understand it, not only helps you learn, but it also gives you confidence.
Mhm.
And that's why I'm so proud to be a part of Diabetes Sisters, because our core mission is something that's always been so important to me. And yeah, I know
Really?
Scott and I met years ago in the old
Yeah,
blogging days, and are still happy to be together working on things, providing support.
absolutely. Susan, can you talk a little bit about what it was like for you? You mentioned carpooling to other people that had diabetes. Tell me a little bit about what that was like for you in just spending some time with other people who were wrestling with some of the same issues that you navigate
Yeah.
daily.
That connected emotion, it was so cool. It's really life-changing too. So I went into the dining hall and I'm like, what am I gonna do? And I could hear other people's alarms going off. This is so cool. And I had only been putting what I was eating into my app on my phone, and then I would know how many carbs, and then I would bolus. So I had a system. Well, wireless does not work up in the Sequoias. So I went over to a table of people, and I kind of knew the other stuff on my plate, but I'm like, what would you bolus for this? I had a bunch of salad, and they were just like, oh yeah, nothing. It's just salad. Or like, oh, well, I mean, people were just throwing out ideas, and it was like, wow, you can just do this and you can just kind of guesstimate. It was just amazing. And then seeing people, okay, sounds so silly. One night I couldn't sleep because it was cold. And so I walked down to the dining hall, and there's a bunch of people sitting there at midnight playing a really inappropriate card game, which was funny as heck. And one of them, with one hand, she's changing out her pump, and with the other hand, she's got the cards. I'm like, wow, people just live life and live large and do this and do all this stuff. It was so cool. And then I do go to Meetings with Diabetes Sangha, which is also online. It's a meditation group. So meditation and mindfulness is a strategy to cope with diabetes. And diabetes is used as a strategy to achieve to achieve mindfulness, because it really does keep you in the present moment. And that's really cool too. Just that regular, I could be at one of those sessions and go, oh, I have this big problem with my pump, or, such and such is going on. Or the doctor said this to me, and other people are like, oh yeah, or they know. Or I was out of town. I was in Las Vegas changing planes, and I have forgotten to bring an important piece of equipment, and they're problem solving with me on the phone, like, oh, you could do this, you could do that. So it is kind of amazing. It's just a really cool thing.
You mentioned
That's great.
a couple of things, and Karen, I see we've got a couple of questions coming in, so
We do. We'll get to those in a second.
yeah, but thank you. Keep the questions coming in.
Yes.
Susan, one thing that made me smile when you mentioned it was talking about how diabetes and perfectionism are like it. I think diabetes is a perfectionist's worst nightmare, because there's nothing else in the world where I can think of where you make a decision and then you get the opportunity to judge yourself a couple of hours later, whether you did right or wrong or good enough or not good enough, that kind of thing. And so it just like, man, that really makes me chuckle when I think about it.
For sure, for sure. Something that really resonated with me, and I want to make sure to touch on it a little bit, is I admire you, Susan, for trying all of the different services. I didn't think I needed a dietitian, but I tried it anyway, and I did. I didn't think I need that, and I think that's something that we don't always acknowledge. We don't always know what we don't know, and you don't know what you need if you don't have it. So thank you for giving us that example of being open to experiences, and let's see what it could be like, because you never know how beneficial it could be until you try it.
That's a great point. And the beauty of Blue Circle being free is that I was willing to, I wasn't spending money to find out that I really needed it.
And you did. You did. Well, I want to thank you both for your excellent presentation and for sharing the incredible work and your experiences with Blue Circle Health. Before we get over to the questions, I see a couple in the Q&A, and if anyone has some more, now's the time to pop them into the Q&A box. Before I take the first question, I want to salute Andrea Renner, who shared that she is celebrating her 5-year anniversary today. So congratulations, Andrea, and thank you for being here with us today to celebrate. So Alejandra asks, what things do you think helped you most in managing diabetes? What things that you learned, I guess, helped you the most? Or Scott, what do you think some of the best advice Blue Circle or programs Blue Circle has?
I think I'll take a stab at it, Susan, and then you can think about what you'd like to share. I think, with diabetes, there's always a sense of learning, right? So our medical information is always growing and adapting. So learning as much as you can about your body and your diabetes. And then I really think exposure to other people living with diabetes. We all know that each person has a slightly different way that they manage their diabetes. And what works for Susan or Karen may or may not work for me. But what that does for me in just sort of getting some exposure to what they're doing or how they're approaching different problems, it may be a way that I hadn't thought about before. And it really, we talked about the value of community. And one of the things that I think back to Karen mentioning about, kind of when I first got connected to social media with diabetes was just seeing all these different people with slightly different approaches to similar problems. And that it just kind of opened my mind to new solutions and new possibilities. The other thing that I think was big for me was Before finding other people with diabetes, I thought the things that I was struggling with in diabetes that I was just bad at, or extra broken, or, I'm no good at carb counting or whatever. And the reality is, no, like, carb counting is a really hard thing, and a lot of people struggle to do it right. And so I found this sense of normalcy in talking with other people and connecting with other people. So those are two big things. The last thing that I would say is, if you're not being treated appropriately, and what I mean by that is, if you're working with your healthcare professional and you maybe are not on the right medications or the right doses of medications, it's going to be frustrating because you'll be trying very hard. Susan, like you were talking about, when you were just on basal therapy when you really needed basal bolus therapy, right? And how frustrating it must have felt when you're trying everything you could do and still not seeing the results that you're being told you should expect. And so I think working closely with a healthcare professional that you trust to help you just get on the right recipe, the right regimen of medicines and therapies is a big deal. I talked a lot, Susan. I want to give you an
No,
opportunity to
that,
chime in on that too.
that's fine. Actually, that does cue us up. If I could just take our next question, and then we can circle back to Susan. We're running short on time too. But someone has asked, how does Blue Circle Health integrate with a participant's existing healthcare providers? And I know the slides did say that it does. Can you explain a little bit about how that works?
Yeah, I'll be brief. So after each appointment, Blue Circle Health will send chart notes off to whatever doctors or healthcare professionals the participant wants us to keep in the loop. And with that, there's a two-way communication. So if that existing doctor has things they would like the Blue Circle Health team to focus on with that participant, we can spend a little bit of extra time there as well. But we recognize we're only a short-term program. 6 months in the life of someone with type 1 diabetes. 6 months is a long time, but in the big picture, it's a flash in the pan. And so we need the healthcare team that's going to be working with you after the fact to be very up to date with what we've done, and also happy to help support them in any gaps that they might want us to help with.
Perfect. And now I did want to circle back to Suzanne, and maybe you can tell us just what's the one most important thing you think you learned about managing diabetes from this program?
I have to agree with Scott. It's like staying on top of it. And there's so much, it's like trying to drink from a fire hose. So, I found a few sources that really resonated with my approach. And I try to keep up to date on what's going on because it's a moving target. It changes all the time. And then something really basic, a very beginner thing that helped me quite a bit, was understanding the action of insulin, that it takes time and how much time it takes. So learning about insulin, learning about the insulin I'm using.
I still have trouble remembering that. Why am I not instantly back in range? Yeah. Well, yeah, it takes time. Well, speaking of time, we are out of time. Before we go, I have a few important reminders, but first I want to give another huge thank you to Scott and Susan for sharing so much about the incredible program and sharing so openly about your experience with it. We're so grateful for your time and insights, and we at Diabetes Sisters are so excited to continue our collaboration with Blue Circle Health. Thank you all so much for joining us. Be sure to do your survey when it comes in the email, and we hope we see you again soon.